For me, there's nothing better than a beautiful, elegant answer to a really good question. When it happens, it's a joy to behold. But I have never enjoyed a question as much as the one Rabbi Bernstein brings us on our parsha. Let's look at it quickly so you could take a moment to bask in its beauty. We know, and we'll see here, that the Torah sometimes will call something by the name it will ultimately be referred to even before the event that determined that name. We're familiar with that. Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law, is known in the Torah by several names. According to the Mechilta, he's known as Yeser, Yisro, Chever, Chovav, Reuel, Pituel, and Cani. The Mechilta explains that he was named Yeser after he added to the Torah, the judicial structure of how legal disputes are resolved. And later, he's called Yisro because of his abundant good deeds at the time that he actually converted. With this, let's look at our parsha. Vayomer el Moshe, he sent word to Moshe, Ani chosencha, I, your father-in-law, Yisro, ba elecha, I'm coming to you, v'ishtecha u'shnei vaneha ima, with your wife and her 2 sons. Now listen to this question from Rabbi Bernstein. The Torah calls him Yisro from the first times he's mentioned, but when he first came to Moshe and Bnei Israel shortly after Kriyas Yamsuf, before he would add to the judicial system that named him Yeser, and before he would later convert, earning him the name Yisro, this isn't the Torah speaking, this is a quote from Yisro himself. So the question is, at that point, when he only first arrived at the camp, how did Yisro know his name was Yisro? Welcome to Dimensions in Chumash by Rabbi Immanuel Bernstein, part of our collective Journeys in Torah. Yes, the Torah often refers to something by the way in which it would be called in the future, even if it was not known that way at the time. In Parshas Lech Lecha, the Torah describes how the 4 kings wage war against the 5 in the field of Amalek, even though Amalek is the grandson of Esav, who hadn't even been born yet. It's one thing for the Torah to use a term that would come into use later than the events it's describing. Hashem knows the future. At the time the Torah is written down, these terms are already known and can be applied in retrospect. But that's the beauty of our pasuk. Yisro is speaking in real time. How then could he call himself by a name that did not yet exist? Well, the key to answer this comes from raising an even more basic question. Throughout the Torah, we read things that various people said. Some of them are righteous personalities, like the Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu. Others are completely unrighteous, like Esav, Lavan, and Paro. In these instances, we ask, whose words are we reading, the Torah's or these people's? On the one hand, the Torah has deemed it correct to include these words so much that if even one letter of any of these quotations would be missing from a Torah scroll, the whole thing would be disqualified. That makes this dialogue an inseparable and indispensable part of the text and sanctity of the Torah. On the other hand, it's clear that not all of these words reflect the Torah's message and viewpoint. In some cases, they obviously don't, as the Torah's own presentation specifically contrasts with the person's words being quoted. For example, when Paro recounts his dreams to Yosef, he states, "In my dream, I was standing al Sfas Hayar, on the bank of the Nile." Except we happen to know that this is not exactly where Paro dreamt that he was standing. The Torah itself prefaced by stating that Paro dreamt he was standing al Hayar, over the Nile. Let's set aside the question of why Paro adjusted this detail. We do see that his words in Pasuk 17 don't match up with the Torah's in Pasuk 1. And yet they are both part of the Torah. In other words, the full lesson that the Torah wants to teach us about Paro's dream included both what he actually dreamt and what he said he dreamt. Of course, we can't be surprised by an intentional departure from the truth from someone like Paro. By contrast, righteous individuals who the Torah quotes will be much more aligned with Torah values and messages. But my friends, this perfectly illustrates the perspective that the Torah quotes people's words as their words, and this principle applies to everyone the Torah quotes. It's their words being quoted, not the Torah's. However, the reality of this is much more nuanced. While it's true that the Torah presents people's words, at the same time, it's still the Torah presenting them. And this is the key. Every word in the Torah is written on a level which allows it to be expounded through the prisms of pshat, the plain meaning, drash, careful systematic interpretation, remez is allusion, and sod, the mystical meaning. So whether complaining to Moshe about the mun, instructing Aaron to make for them a golden calf, or wailing in response to the spies' report about the land of Israel, it's impossible to think that they all crafted their words to be worthy of all of these levels of interpretation. They wouldn't be capable of doing so even if they tried. The more reasonable explanation is, as much as the Torah cites the essential content of their words when quoting them, the actual way in which it does so is in keeping with how the Torah itself expresses ideas. The words that the Torah chose to present what someone said will be governed by the way those words reflect the Torah's own ideas and message. A classic example of this can be seen in a comment of Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Vayikra. Avraham tells the three wayfarers, "I will get bread, v'sa'adu libchem, and you will sustain your hearts." Commenting on the words, v'sa'adu libchem, Rashi, citing a midrash, writes, it's not written here levavchem with two bases, but rather libchem with one base. This teaches us that the angels do not have a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination. It seems pretty clear that Avraham himself did not intend to phrase his words as specifically appropriate for angels. Rashi's already informed us in the previous pasuk that Avraham thought these three men were idol-worshipping strangers. But at the same time that the Torah is quoting what Avraham said, it's doing so in a way which also serves to teach us lessons that the Torah itself wants to teach. The midrash Rashi quoted is careful to allude to this. It points out that the pasuk doesn't say the more appropriate levavchem, but rather libchem, to teach that the Yetzer Hara doesn't have power over angels. In other words, the sage's observation does not relate to what Avraham said, but rather to what is written in the pasuk. It was the Torah relating the point it wanted to make by altering the words it says Avraham spoke. And this brings us back to our opening question. We can now understand how he is quoted in the Torah as referring to himself as Yisro, even though he did not yet know at the time that that would become his name. As surely as the Torah, equipped as it is with the magic of analytical possibilities, chooses to refer to him from this point with the name Yisro, as per the future, likewise it presents his message to Moshe as calling himself by this name, Yisro. And of course, questions remain, and I was able to discuss this with Rabbi Bernstein. One working theory is, as the Torah is Eitz Chaim Hi, the Torah is a living tree, meaning it contains meanings and messages for us at every point in our own life and journey. This is why you can learn the same parsha every year and connect to something new that you hadn't connected to in the past, because the Torah grows with our growth. And this, Rabbi Bernstein and I discussed, could be one of the points of our question. Hashem knows the potential and destiny of all of us. Whoever we are when we are younger contains all of the potential for what we will become, what we will achieve on our journeys. And just like that, we've learned a fundamental method found throughout our Holy Torah. Rabbi Bernstein made this powerful tool something that we can more easily recognize and appreciate as we move through our learning. Another way to appreciate it is to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit the share button to paste the link to this video into emails and texts to family and friends. It's the power and majesty of Talmud Torah which brings us all together.